Hi there and welcome to the second drawing class. Just a word before you start there. The beginning and the end of the video that you see is just cut a little bit. At the end, I don't know why there was some problem, it just cut out before I actually ended, but I think you get the gist of the last drawing exercise that you see there. I think there's enough to go on with, and the video starts straight in when I begin to explain about a technique called modified contour drawing. It's a direct kind of follow on from the previous exercise we did called contour drawing. So I hope you enjoy.
Okay,
Take
now
care.
I'm going to explain what modified contour drawing is about. In contour drawing, what we're doing, I'll just give a brief comparison. Modified contour drawing, I've just drawn a squiggle there. There we go. And while we are, because one hand can move exactly the same as another hand, which is in a way miraculous, but we do it every day and we don't think about doing it. We know that if we say, okay, this hand is here and we have this finger here, and if we just tell one hand to do what the other hand is doing, it'll do it for us. So I am not looking at my drawing hand at all, and I am only looking at this as this goes all the way down here and going here. I just tell my right hand to do what my left hand is doing. So that's how yesterday's contour drawing went. I think we know how that works. So this is a derivative of this. So when I just measured here from the top of the mountain over to the edge of the page here, like this here, taking the width, going all the way across here, making a little mark. Then what I do is I'm going to measure from the top of the page, at the top of the mountain, to the top of the page, literally by going like this and this. This takes the guesswork out of it, which is what we want. And it's not as if we're cheating or doing anything like this. It's very hard to get it exact otherwise. So we got that there. So I'm going to start going down here. And the thing is, with an object that has many different angles, what you can see what I'm doing here is I'm making little stopping points for all these changes of angles. I'm only going to draw as far as here. Then I'm going to check it twice or three times, and then I'm going to move on. That's the whole thing with modified contour drawing. It's modified as to, you want to just check each piece, make sure you're happy before you move on. The added benefit of this is that you know what you've done is correct, instead of guessing, and at the end you might realize, oh my goodness, I found that line too long and I have to go and redo most of my artwork again, and that just is not what we want. So let me double check this here again. So that's my mark at the top of the mountain, and try to sit directly. So I don't know if you have this here yourself. In time to come, I can supply people with these reference pictures, but yeah, I can just demonstrate this here and now anyway, if you don't have the copy with you. So here goes. I'm going to both hands moving at the same time, at the same distance. I'm going 1, 2, 3. Right here. I'm drawing again. Here. Okay, I'll do it again. Down here. I'll do it one more time. Because I'm a little bit, and it's not exactly in the center, just because my tripod is to the left here. I mightn't get it exactly. Here again. Here again. And doing this here again. You can see what I'm doing there. I know it's a little bit off the edge of the page. I might move over a teensy little bit so you can see a little bit better there. Okay. And then I'm going to go down a bit here. Here. And here. Both hands moving at the same distance at the same time. Cool. That's great. And down again like this here. And then, so that I'm putting little like stopping points at each one of them so we can see exactly where we've stopped. So over here, and I'm going to go here and try to follow it. Not at all, as I keep saying, don't look at this, your drawing hand at all. When you do it this first, sometimes the mind might be going, what's going on here? because we haven't done something like this at all ever. But trust the process. And the more you do something like this, the better it gets. Look here. And this technique I use in lots of different instances. It's really useful. That's that here. And going across. Don't, when you're doing this exercise, don't just do the whole thing in one fell swoop, because it doesn't work too well if you do that. Here, that's a bit too far. Sometimes one hand might move a little bit faster than the other hand. Look here. And then down further. I've noticed that if one goes in a different direction, and we're starting just to learn a process like this, I've noticed with some of my students that the change of direction affects the mind in a funny way. It doesn't want to change direction. Once it's discovered a direction, it can go, it's happy going that direction. But once there's a change of direction, it sort of gets a little bit confuzzled. So just stop. If you feel you're going a bit wrong, stop for a minute, let your brain settle down, and then you can start off again. And then one more time. Okay, and then across here, 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 and then as well here, and really focus on the end of your finger that is going just under the line. You can see that I was a bit distracted there. That's a bit better. I can see the difference there now. I'm sure so can you. Here and here. And thank God, every one of them is always an exercise for me to do as well. So you can see how I had about the same distance off the edge of the page. Now you may not see. Yes, you're just missing off the edge of the page there. I'll just move the piece a little bit. There you go. See, off the edge of the page there. Cool. So if you would like to leave that until later on to try, or if you'd like to give that a go now, absolutely great. Okay, I'll continue on. So that's modified contour drawing exercise. As I said, it's a technique I use very often, and it's extremely useful. So you do need tape to hold down the paper in this case again, because you're using both hands. For these next few exercises, you don't. If you're ever working on single sheets of paper on a hard surface, I always like to have a couple of sheets of paper. Cool. So the next exercise I'd like to show you is how to draw a deciduous tree, and we have plenty of those here in Ireland, and there are so many different types. So I'm really just going to give a generic kind of oak tree, summer tree demonstration here, and see how you get on. There are a few steps to this, but it's worthwhile following them all. Again, this particular exercise is in my book, and it's on page 119 if you're interested. And there are a couple more exercises of how to do different trees as well in the book as well. But here we go. First thing I like to do is maybe just do an overall. Again, drawing a circle is like, make sure you can see it, it's quite light there, isn't it? I might get it. But anyway, if you can't really see, I'm drawing a light circle to try and get the impression of the overall size of the top of the tree with all its leaves and everything. Then I give a line right down the middle, and that will give just an idea of where I can put the trunk. So, like a lot of things, there are some things that when we're starting off to draw, we have like an inbuilt way of maybe wrongly doing things. Amazing. I've noticed that a lot of the students I work with tend to do very long trunks. Now, there are some trees with very long trunks, but in this case, it's amazing how it happens a lot. And so I would just curtail that a little bit. So I've got to either side of this line, I'm drawing a nice trunk there. Okay. So I will then go up this way. I'm just drawing a really light skeleton underneath. Okay, you might need to go a bit closer to see. I want to make sure that you can see it. It's quite light as well. So Let's see if I can up a little bit closer. Maybe I can be seeing a little bit better now. Here we go. Okay, that's a bit better now. So then I've just given a very, very gentle skeleton underneath the tree here. This is just in case when we're drawing the final bits of the tree, we have any little areas of small twigs showing through, we could actually draw them. But I found as well as when people are unsure about the anatomy of certain things, including trees, they tend sometimes to draw quite big twigs instead of the little small ones that should be at the very tip and area around the edges of the tree. So we've got this done, we've got the circle done, trunk, very light skeleton. And then because trees like oak trees have their leaves in a lot of circular clumps. I'm going to just doing this here, really lightly drawing them. You'll see them when I go here, and I draw it all the way around. Hopefully you can see that there. As I say, I keep things light until I'm absolutely sure of what I want as I progress. So because I'm going to do a little bit of shading now, I'm flattening one side of the graphite in my pencil so I can do a quick overall shading of the tree here. And I forgot to put my second piece of paper underneath as well, and that's because I was silly. And I was picking up some of the grain from the wooden table that I'm working on here. I don't want that, but that's a lot better now. If you've got a sketch pad, you won't have that problem. You have lots of pages behind you, hopefully. So I'm going to just do my shading. As you can see here, I'm shading away. And remember, draw in the one direction only, and try not to get lines showing between each line of shading that you're doing. And at the very end, what we can do is, like what we did yesterday, we can blend the shading so that it can be a more uniform shading, which is good, right? Okay. Okay. Okay, great. We got that done now. I pause for that one. Right, so now when you've got just everything shaded there, what we're going to do then is, so my idea of this deciduous tree is that it's going to be pretty realistic. So what we have to do, first of all, we are just getting the overall tonal value onto what was going to be the leaves of the tree. I'm just going to go underneath. What we're doing here is that usually the sun is more or less overhead the trees here, with all the different clumps of the leaves. And so I am drawing underneath. And I'm just drawing an initial underneath. You can see here. Oh, sorry, my head might be in a little bit of the way there. Sorry about that. So you can see a little bit better now. I'm doing this quite roughly, and then I'm blending, and the whole idea is to blend a little bit more. Remember, like we did yesterday, we were doing our gradient blending, and then we were blending the apple as well. I'm going to do this here, and I'm going to do this here as well. I'm going to do this here. You can keep it a little bit rough if you want. What's worse than having something too rough is having something too tidy. I joked with some of the people I've worked with that sometimes they end up with what looks like broccoli trees. And they're very tight and very rigid and just like little bubbles all over the place. So the whole thing about these kind of trees is that they are a little bit messy. Look here. So that's taking shape now. You can see it now. What we want to do is have a little bit of variety. The next point I'd like to do is I want to create the outline going all the way around. And with this, I just preface this by saying, I'll give you a little, actually, I'll just show you. See this, up and down. What some people do when I say do a border, they might have done a very, very uniform kind of border that looks like material like a baudrillard glaze, something like that, or like this. But what we want to do is nearly make it like an uneven, untidy hedge. And you know what that's like in the summer. I'm sure we see plenty of them around everywhere. So, yeah. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do is go around each of the circles like this, and you can actually go in and out a little bit as you go along. This here. There we go. Up there. You see how it's sort of taking shape. Now you don't have to go all the way in. Round, you can do a couple of them inside, but don't overly do it on the inside because then it'll look a bit weird. I'm just going around like this here. And sometimes you don't have to, you can separate some of the little lines so that they're left free, a few of the little squiggled lines there. Okay. There we go. And shape them. That's good. And there we go. And if you want, I can see a couple of the vestige of the skeleton of the tree that I had there later on. What I'm doing is here, I'm creating a little space so that you can see maybe one little branch in there, making sure that I keep the area in there a little bit darker. You see what I'm doing there? And maybe a little one over here as well. There you go. There you go. Just to give a little bit more variety, okay? And so it's taking shape quite nicely. And what I want to do is even have a little bit of a bit more gradient here and there. So it doesn't just have to be all underneath every single bubble, just completely uniformly, as I say. So you can just again with the pencil held like I'm holding it there. Remember I was saying yesterday, if you held your pencil like a normal way when you're shading, you don't get all the extra graphite on the pencil unless you hold it in this kind of area. So and it's very handy. You get used to it. Might take a little time just to get used to, but for the shading areas, it's really useful. It's really helpful. And go here, go here. And when I go down to the trunk of something like an oak tree, I think their bark is kind of not very completely straight. I have to make it a little bit shorter as well. You can see what I'm doing there. So I'm going to do, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do more shading. Now, where was the sun coming from? Could have been overhead, could be from left, could be from right. Let's just see now. Maybe we'll just make it overhead in this case. And if that's the case, what we could do is we could use our trusty rubber and we could just lighten up a little bit of the area around the very top there to give even more of a variety of a 3D look to it as well. Now, see the difference that makes. The thing is, you can always build up, keep building up as you go along. And like I was saying yesterday as well, it's pays to do something like this instead of trying to get it all done in one go. So underneath here, tree, is the darkest area because very little light comes through there. So with something like this, of course, this is just one example of one tree, but every single tree, even if it was the same make of tree, would be slightly different. So you can even squash it down a little bit, widen it a little bit, and then for making different trees, they sometimes have different patterns. Like as I said, in this tree, a lot of circular patterns, kind of wide circles. And in other trees, they have very elongated circles, like poplar trees and particular type of yew trees. And so the whole idea in approaching trees, of all things, is to see the underlying patterns. It's not just drawing it, it makes your job easier if you can see the underlying pattern and then work from the ground up, so to speak. So then, we're finishing off this tree. We've seen this little dark area here, and I've done a few little kind of jaggedy lines to give the impression of rough bark, and just a little bit of gradient there. And oh yes, the ground underneath, a lot of the time, well, you may have a level ground, but a lot of the time, if we do that, it can be a bit boring. So I always like to put a little bit of a curve onto whatever land I'm working with, and maybe a background like this here. And if you put a background in like this, it immediately makes something much more 3D looking. Like I'm giving it really rough now. There we go. This is the background, and in the front, I think about a couple of little things here. And what I like to do when doing grass is just draw a few little blades of grass. Again, when we're starting to learn to draw, sometimes if we're approached with something like grass, we really have to draw every single blade of grass in a field or in a garden. And we don't have to. We just do a few little flicks, like the teachers tick like this here. It's the same thing, a few little flicks here, and then you don't have to, and I would advise not to do it completely straight up. All these little things I've learned the hard way myself, I can tell you. I'll do a little bit of a trunk there, a little bit of, sorry, the roots just coming in just a little bit there as well to make things a little bit interesting. So a little bit here, and a few blades of grass, and maybe a couple of blades of grass here, and a couple of blades of grass there. And then we go here, and over there. Now I know I have scribbles all over the place here. And I'm just darkening up a little bit the faraway hills. There we go here. And there we are. What I often add is maybe a little branch, something along here. So you can of course just play around with it as we say, and